Greetings, HorrorFam, and welcome to another selection from the TalkHorror Treasury. It's your old pal, the Diabolical Doctor here, and tonight, I have something scary to show you.
We're friends to the end, remember?
Anthology films have been a staple of the horror genre for almost as long as the genre's been around. But if there's one word that could better describe the anthology horror subgenre more than enduring, it's uneven, and some of the most cherished examples of the subgenre are primarily known for just that one story. The one that you're most likely to see representing the film on the cover, and in certain cases the only reason why you watch some of these films twice. The segments on this list are scarier, sometimes just more entertaining, or simply more outstanding than those they share their films with. As such, we're picking only one segment per movie, which also means that this shouldn't necessarily be taken as a top 10 anthology films video. But enough with semantics, horror fam. Let's begin our tale of the vignettes that we at Talk Horror consider to be the 10 best examples of that one story. The 10 best segments in anthology horror films. Number 10. Bobo, from the 2000's Terror Tract. In the second house in the titular Terror Tract, we meet a homeowner with an animal problem. Or problem animal. An impish capuchin monkey in an organ grinder's outfit. Bobo. His daughter Jennifer falls in love with the monkey and wants to keep it inside as a pet. Our hero Ron Gatley eventually caves in. He soon wishes he hadn't. While Bobo's acts of mischief steadily grow in hostility, as do Mr. Gatley's efforts to get rid of his unwanted house guest. But Jennifer's fairy tale adoration for the beast remains the same, and the resulting cat and mouse between monkey and man threatens to destroy the whole family. Bryan Cranston plays Ron Gatley with a lifelike sense of mounting frustration that sells the animal as a real threat to his health and sanity. And the monkey is perhaps the best trained animal in an anthology segment that I've yet seen, as could be expected from Crystal the monkey, who'd go on to steal the show in Night at the Museum and Hangover 2. And kudos to Bobo for being the only killer ape in anthology history. Well, unless you count Fluffy. Number 9, 10/31/98, from 2012's VHS. When selecting that one story from the VHS series, most of y'all would expect me to pick Safe Haven, or if not that, then Amateur Night. But I'm calling it the official Talk Horror opinion that 10/31/98 is the best segment out of anything in the series. In it, 4 overgrown dude bros go to a Halloween party and find no one there to greet them. Upon exploration of the house, they think they found the real party going on upstairs, only to realize they've stumbled into something deadly serious. The rest of the segment's brisk runtime is all about getting out alive. Standing in the way is a relentless barrage of magic tricks that seem real. The takes are long, the set is eerie, and the filter of grain coupled with the fact that we never linger on any one gag for too long makes the effects more believable. For the mystery its title kinda suggests, 10/31/98 is pretty straightforward next to some VHS segments. But it succeeds at being what it is, a haunted house thrill ride on All Hallows Eve, and one which should be welcome at any Halloween party. Number 8, Blind Alleys, from 1972's Tales from the Crypt. A segment based on a story from the final issue of the original Tales from the Crypt magazine. It involves a home for the blind where the new administrator, Major William Rogers, decides to run the institution like he'd run a military barrack. That means comfort and luxury for the commanding officer, while the other ranks are left to endure the cold and the hunger.
Food is bad, it tastes worse to us. And if it's cold, we feel the cold more.
After a man dies on a winter night, the other inmates in this brig decide that it's time for a good old-fashioned fragging. They wrangle the warden and his attack dog too, and help each other to construct, in a demonstration of just how far ahead of the curve 50s horror comics were, a prototypical saw trap for their would-be caretaker, a narrow corridor lined with razor blades, in which they decide when the lights are on or off. Still, you might be reluctant to dub this horror, since we're brought to fully empathize with blind charges being held back to their tyrannical warden. Surely no jury on earth would convict these poor men, even if any one of them would probably tear out your windpipe if you pushed him far enough. Don't worry about that, though. You're a good person.
I don't care about your warnings. I want to get out of here.
Number 7. Hair from 1993's Body Bags. In a story that begins with the pulverized remains of a man who ended up throwing himself from a high-rise, comes a tale which presents the even more nightmarish alternative that he was faced with. In Hair, the second segment in John Carpenter's Body Bags, we meet a man whose fear of losing his hair hooks him up with his own personal Delilah, a hair doctor named Dr. Locke, played by David Warner, whose hair loss cure is too good to be good for its recipient. Richard was afraid of losing his virility.
Yes.
His potence.
Yes.
His manliness.
Yes, yes.
And that's exactly what happens the next morning. While the sudden reversal of Richard's hair loss shows no signs of fading, Richard becomes too tired to keep up with his wife, feels too sick to go outside, and his hair keeps growing in awful places. Too late, it becomes apparent that what he's turning into is nothing manly at all, but something more akin to infested cattle. Hair is that rare anthology segment that begins with you chortling at its goofiness, but ends with you feeling a little sick.
We're particularly enjoying your brain.
Number 6, Boys Do Get Bruised, from 1995's Tales from the Hood. The second segment in the socially minded anthology, Tales from the Hood, focuses on an issue that can hit close to home, regardless of whether or not you're from the hood. In it, a boy named Walter is battered by a monster each night just after his mom tucks him in. At school, Walter deals with his terrors the only way he knows how. He draws them out on paper. His pictures gain the concern of a teacher who discovers the injuries that the monster left on Walter and asks to visit with his mother to voice his concerns. But even as the child's prospects look up, he's driven to crumple a picture he drew of the school bully. And then, something paranormal takes place.
How do you break both arms and legs? Falling down.
Events in Walter's life converge on one fateful night, when his teacher gets to meet the monster in his drawings face to face, and Walter's fearful living situation breaks down in a gruesome way. Boys Do Get Bruised uses fantasy to give us an uncomfortable look at the tragic reality of those who are forced to learn how to cope before they learn how to drive. Number 5, The Bishop of Battle from 1983's Nightmares. Nightmare's second segment feels a lot like the 80s or 90s teen horror novels you could find in the school library. The Bishop of Battle sports a kitschy premise, but never feels like a joke. It revolves around an addicted gamer, JJ, played by Emilio Estevez, who spends far more time in the arcade than his parents would like. JJ's obsession is called the Bishop of Battle, a berserk analog with Galaga aesthetics with an impossible 12th level, an unreachable 13th, and at its center. One night, JJ sneaks from his house to the arcade, picks up his light gun, and aims to settle the score. Without the roar of the crowd, the heat, the pressure, he succeeds in beating level 12. But level 13 has a killer learning curve. Not only is The Bishop of Battle an ambitious spectacle for what was ultimately a TV movie, it is probably the scariest video game horror story ever put to film, as the only one to succeed at making game graphics look truly predatory. Number 4, Meet Sam, from 2009's Trick or Treat. Admit it, who else was in love with this little guy from the moment you saw him? Halloween Sam was quick to grow a cult following, and it's in no small part due to his vignette with Mr. Krieg in Trick or Treat, which totally counts as an anthology film. From a previous segment, Krieg is hyped up to be the grand bastard of the film. Not only did he drive a school bus full of disabled kids off of a cliff for money, he doesn't even give out candy on Halloween. As many holiday tales go, this grumpy old man is shown the error of his ways by the very spirit of the season itself. And the spirit of Holly Jolly Samhain warns that if you're caught lacking treats, then you'd better have a trick or two to escape a season's beating. Meet Sam is intense, it's funny, it's lit like a jack-o'-lantern, and it's all centered around an ideal holiday hero for a bunch of Halloween-loving horror heads. Like any of us during the season, Sam wants you to put on that costume and give out a full-sized candy, or risk a punishment just as sure as any Billy would dish out on Christmas. Number 3, Bobby from 1977's Dead of Night. In the third segment from 1977's anthology Dead of Night, not to be confused with 1945's anthology Dead of Night, nor any of the other 50 or 60 movies entitled Dead of Night, a hysterical mother begs dark powers for her beloved son who drowned in an accident to return to her. What she doesn't know is that that's not possible. But not because those dark powers don't exist. Because soon after completing the ritual, she hears a boy calling for his mother in the cold rain. Euphoric from her good fortune, the mother brings Bobby into the house to warm up. But once the joy from their reunion wears off, Bobby proceeds to ask his mommy some questions she doesn't want to answer.
Were you nice to me, Mommy?
Why are you asking me these questions?
Were you nice to me, Mommy?
And soon decides that if she'd rather play games, then he'll play some games of his own. Games with a power, games with a phone, games with knives. A rare example of a monkey's paw story that doesn't cut off before it gets to the really fun part. Bobby delivers pulse-pounding suspense, and a rare killer kid that you'll admit you wouldn't want beef with.
Bobby hates you, Mommy.
Number 2, The Drop of Water from 1963's Black Sabbath. In the film that inspired the band's name, a nurse is faced with a matter of temptation. The recently deceased woman who she's preparing for burial, Miss Zena, wears a sapphire ring that seems just too gorgeous to go to the grave with her. Against her superstitious colleague's warning, she gives in to temptation and takes the ring, and is thereon faced with a more dire peril. Miss Zena was a medium in life, and she's coming home with the nurse to teach her a lesson in what the spirits of the dead are capable of, especially when you disturb their resting place. And soon, little reminders from Zena's deathbed start popping up around the nurse's home. A fly that won't buzz off, and a persistent dripping sound that isn't coming from any faucet in the house. In this respect, I actually strongly recommend the English dub over the original Italian, because the sound effect from the title is so sparsely used in the original soundtrack that even if the dub is less subtle, it more memorably embodies its title by having the drop of water really haunt our tormented protagonist. Even if the segment's lonely atmosphere or stylish set design don't haunt you, the image of Miss Zena's frozen, desiccated face will. Whether you watch the cut in which it's the first segment or the one in which it's the last, the drop of water will stay with you for long after the movie ends. And number 1, They're Creeping Up on You from 1982's Creepshow. I've said it before, and before it's over, I'll say it again. Creepshow is the greatest horror anthology ever made. There's not a bad segment in the lineup. The Crate and Something to Tide You Over could have both easily made this list if they weren't among each other's stellar company. But as I only have one segment per film to choose from, the top spot on this list goes to Creepshow's final segment, They're Creeping Up on You. They're Creeping Up on You centers around an antisocial, in every sense of the word, robber baron who spends his time in what he hoped would be a sterile bunker against any pest, hooligan, or microorganism that would threaten him, just as he conducts business that destroys the lives of those who live in the outside world.
Bugs. That's all they are. I know what to do with a bug when I see it. Spray it. Squash it. Kill it.
But what Upson Pratt hoped would be a sterile bunker cannot withhold the plague born from the city that he helped to corrupt. As he occupies his time taunting and teasing the wailing widow of one of his rivals, the bug problem that crept in grows beyond his already tenuous control, and when the power goes out, the Horseman of Pestilence declares war. They're Creeping Up on You as a masterclass in oppressive atmosphere, and even though it's another one where we're rooting against the main protagonist, Pratt is just another detestable feature of the Roach Motel we're visiting. In the end, you'll be more than able to admit that you're glad that it's him trapped inside and not you, even though you may feel the urge to keep your mouth closed for a while after the movie's over.
What's the matter, Mr. Pratt? Bugs got your tongue?
And that, Horror Fam, was TalkHorror's 10 best segments in Anthology Horror. If you're glad we included one of your faves, got you curious about something you've never seen, or think there's something else that deserved to make the list, let us know in the comments below. And as always, keep your eyes peeled and your ears open to look horror, listen horror, talk horror.